Today we're going to talk about Keymaster from Future Tense, the HACS integration that allows you to control your door lock codes from a Z-Wave door lock on a timed or scheduled basis from the Home Assistant UI. So let's jump on over to the computer and get started. For the installation of Keymaster, we're going to kind of follow along the wiki, and I'll point out some things that I've learned along the way. The wiki page talks about how you set all of this up. And the first thing you need to do is make sure you select an appropriate Z-Wave network. For my setup, I'm running Z-Wave JS. This is the area that Home Assistant is focusing their effort on. That's the latest, greatest Z-Wave integration that we're using. You can use Open Z-Wave Beta, and you can use Z-Wave. However, the recommendation is that you use Z-Wave JS. That is one that has been the most reliable and the fewest issues, according to this document here. If you need help in understanding that, I've got some videos on Z-Wave JS, Open Z-Wave Beta, and that kind of thing. So check those out. Also, you must be running Home Assistant Community Store in Home Assistant. This needs to be installed. Not only do we need Keymaster from Home Assistant Community Store, but we're going to need some UI integration and front-end stuff so that we can display the lock cards when we get to that point. So if you need help installing Home Assistant Community Store, make sure you're checking out my video on the Home Assistant Community Store. I will link that down below in the comments so that you can get started with that. That's an important thing to have anyway, because you can do so many different things with Home Assistant Community Store, and there are so many integrations and add-ons that you can add to your Home Assistant setup if you have that installed. Okay, so let's take a look over at the Future Tense thing, the Future Tense wiki article. So on the pre-installation steps, make sure that you have this entry in your configuration.yaml file. You're going to need this so that it can look at the packages directory and pull all of the YAML and stuff that's associated with this package into Home Assistant. All this does is tells Home Assistant to go look in this directory named packages and include the YAML files from that directory. I did not need to create the packages directory. That was done automatically by the add-on when I added it on, or the integration. It also says these steps are only needed for version 0.022 and earlier. Their latest version is, I believe, 3 or more. So we don't need to do any of this stuff here. All of that will be taken care of. We don't need the package files or any of that, unless you're trying to install an older version of this plugin or this integration. All right, so that covers the pre-installation steps. Now, installing the integration, you can do it manually or you can do it through the Home Assistant Community Store. We're going to do it through the Home Assistant Community Store. Okay, so let's come over to my Home Assistant server and let's install the Home Assistant Community Store integration. And that's this Home Assistant Community Store right here. And for integrations, we're going to click on the integrations, and then if I move myself out of the way here, you'll click on this Explore and Add Repositories button, and that'll bring up a search box. We're going to search for Keymaster, and you'll see that here. And we'll click on it, and it gives you some information. You can open the repository. In this case, we're going to install the repository in HACS. We're going to select version 0.0.31, which is why, by the way, over here, we talk about pre-installation steps. Anything later than 0.0.22 doesn't require these steps down below. Since we're installing 0.0.31, we're okay. So I will install that. That might take a minute depending on your setup. Mine's very quick. Now, once you install that, we might as well come over here and let's find out some other stuff. In the Loveless view, when we actually add these cards to the UI, we're going to need a few other things. While we're in the Home Assistant Community Store, we might as well go ahead and install the Auto Entities, Card Tools, Fold Entity Row, and Number Box Card if you don't have these installed already. So I'll do this one by one. I'm going to search for, and typically for the UI, the front end is what you look for. Integrations are things that talk to other services. The front end is the display part, and that's what we're talking about mostly for these. And now let me make sure I remember the card. Okay, so Loveless Auto Entity. So we'll search for Auto Entity, and you'll see this here, Auto Entities. Click on it, and just like we did before, we're going to install the repository. And we'll go back and see, and it says it needs to clear my browser cache. And we'll do that now. We'll probably have to do this a couple of times for the other things that we install here. So Loveless Card Tools will be next. So we'll search for card tools. Here's card tools. Same process. All these are going to be the same process. And it may ask you to clear the cache one more time. A lot of these front-end things, when they install it, require you to clear the cache so that it can reload all of the CSS and everything else that requires for that integration or add-on. All right, so we're reloading again. While that's doing that, let's look for the next, which would be leveless fold entity row. So I'll find the fold entity row. Here it is right here. So install the repository, install, and then we wait. Again, it'll probably ask us to clear the cache. Now you could cancel all these and clear the cache one time only. And then finally, the number box card is required. And we will look for that one as well. Again, these are all front-end items. Number box. Install this one, install it. And one more refresh of the cache. Now, if we go over to if we go back to the HACS store, I believe it'll tell us this. We do have one integration that requires a restart of Home Assistant in order for it to load it. And that's because we installed the Keymaster. Once we restart Home Assistant, then we'll be able to use the integration in Home Assistant's actual integration section. We're going to go over to Configuration, Server Controls, and we're going to check our configuration. Always, always, always check your configuration before you do a restart. It says configuration is valid, so we're going to go ahead and restart. And once it's restarted, we'll see you on the other side. Okay, Home Assistant has started. Tells you down here, it's getting itself finalized. Now we should have nothing listed in HACS requiring a restart. So there's nothing here telling us we need any kind of activity or action. We do our next step though is we do need to install the integration for Home Assistant itself. So when you install something in HACS as an integration, typically it'll install the components it needs there, but then you have to go into Home Assistant, into the integrations, install the integration there, which then talks between the two and kind of makes the bridge between the integrations thing it's talking to in HACS and Home Assistant itself. So we'll do that now, integrations. All right, so we'll click the Add Integration button here, and we will search for Keymaster, and you'll see it pop up here. If you don't have this here, you may have to refresh this screen, the integrations page, or for some reason it did not get installed in HACS correctly. So let's click on that. The integration is being installed. Now I have two locks. I have two Quickset 910 locks, and it actually identifies those here. You have your front door, in my case, and back door lock. So I'm going to choose the front door lock. Now this is important right here. We have 10 code slots by default. If you need 10 different code slots, by all means, create 10 different code slots. But what you're doing when you create those, and you'll see this later on, when you create the user interface, the UI part of this, you're going to have 10 slots plus all the associated controls with those slots, all of the sensors, everything that goes with it. So if you don't need 10 slots, narrow it down to what you need so that you're not bogging down your UI when you're trying to load the lock control page. I'm going to start with 2 just to have something to play with. Now, one thing I noticed with the UI, I can't backspace here. I don't know if that's a UI issue or browser issue, but what I'm going to do is type in 2 slots and go back 1 space with the cursor and then delete it. Again, I don't know if that's a bug or not. Most cases, you're going to want to start from code slot number 1. There's some ID brand locks that require something different, but we're going to start from code slot number 1 because that's how my locks work. And then you need to give it a lock name of something that's recognizable. And I'm just going to name it that way, just so that it's actually, I'm just going to say front door. I just want something identifiable that maybe is not quite the same as other stuff on my system. And then for my locks, I don't have a door sensor, a thing that tells me whether or not the door sensor is open or closed. You can, if you have one of those, choose it from the list here. I don't. Also, in Z-Wave.js, the version I'm running, alarm level and alarm type are no longer sent across from the lock. So we don't use those for anything. But you still need to have something there. So they created a thing called sensor.fake. We will not use these. So we're going to leave those set as sensor.fake. And then the path to the packages directory, leave that as default unless there's some reason you know you need to change it. And if you know you need to change it, you are more advanced than most. So just leave it alone. And then I'm going to click on hide pins in the UI. Doesn't really matter that much unless someone gets a hold of your UI and you don't want them to see your code, or you're filming, let's say, a YouTube video and you don't want to put your codes out there necessarily while you're filming. And then if you have child locks file, you'll have to specify that here. That's beyond the scope of this video. I'm not going to show that here. And then once you're done with all of this stuff, then you will click on submit. And it will go ahead and build out that log for you. It's building all your sensors, your entities, all the stuff that goes along with this particular lock. And you should have a created configuration front door success. And here in the lock Keymaster, you now have front door, and you should show 3 entities: front door code slot 1, front door code slot 2, and the door network, whatever that happens to be. Okay, now we're ready to start populating the UI. So in the UI, what has occurred, and let me show you a couple other things here. Once you create this, you're going to get a couple of notifications here. You're going to get Keymaster package file generation complete, Keymaster starting package file generation. So it's backwards, right? It started the file generation and it's completed the file generation. Those files are stored on your Home Assistant server, system, whatever. So I'm going to dismiss all of these right now. If you want to use the UI, which I do, this is where you're going to need to use those files. So let's go take a look at those files now. I'm going to do that through File Editor. Okay, so let's go over to File Editor and let's take a look at those files. You either need to have File Editor installed, have access to the terminal, or you can use, SSH and terminal. So we'll go to File Editor and we're going to open up the file that was just created. Now remember, we specified /platforms or packages /Keymaster. So we're going to look for that here. We're going to scroll down to a directory called packages. And in that directory, you see Keymaster. Click on that. And I've only added one lock, so I have the front door lock here. And I'm going to click on that folder. And the folder I am most interested in is this front door loveless. So I'm going to open that up. And you can see here all of the YAML code that is necessary to create the UI that basically makes the card. And the reason you need all those extra things you installed in HACS is because it's going to use those within the card that you're going to see here in a minute. So what we want to do is I'm just going to click anywhere inside this area, and I'm going to Control A on my keyboard to copy all of this. So Control A to select all, Control C to copy it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to edit my dashboard, and I'm going to add this whole lock setup to that. So to do that in the UI editor, I'm going to click on this over here, these 3 dots, and I'm going to edit the dashboard. And I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to click on Raw Configuration Editor. We're going to look at the entire thing in raw YAML code. And that's it for this dashboard. But what we're going to do is take that copied configuration YAML stuff we got just now from the file editor. We're going to start on the very far left over here. Make sure you're up against the far left. And I'm going to Control V to paste. And now you can see that it has pasted in all of that code we copied from the other file. And now I'm going to save it. Okay, I've saved it now, and I've come back to the dashboard here where we added that. And you'll notice here that it added a new view, which the little lock on here, that's the icon that was selected. And so this is the view that we're working with. And it's added two cards, or 2 sections, one for each of the codes we created. And remember, we only created 2 codes, or 2 code slots. In this lock that I could have up to 29, but again, you don't want to have more than necessary because it slows down. And the reason why, let me go ahead and exit out of this editor. And you can see that when I click on advanced options, I get all of these options here. And even though it doesn't show these, it populates the dashboard or the view here with all of these options for every single slot. So you could have, if you had 10 slots, you're going to have 10 panels looking like this in the background. Anyway, so what we have is we have 2 slots here. And what I want to show you as well is that I have my Z-Wave.js panel open, control panel open as well. And this is slot 1. and this is the user code in slot 1, and this is slot 2, and this is a blank user code in slot 2 because it's currently not enabled, and you can see that here. So let me go through a few of these things here. Obviously, the name is whatever you want to give the name. The PIN is the code that they would enter into the lock. Now, on the name, if you're going to use this in some sort of notification system, such as pushover or something else, it will actually grab the name. So you should use something that makes sense here. And then the PIN obviously is the numbers here that you enter in the code in the lock. And I've got it hidden here in the integration. You saw that I click the hide PIN in the UI. That's what it does. It makes it look like a password field. This particular code is currently enabled. I don't have notifications turned on, but I can do that now. And that allows notifications to come from this code slot to whatever notification service I choose to use. And I'll show you a little bit of that later. And then our PIN status is currently connected. That means it's connected itself to the lock and sent the PIN and it updated everything. Our desired PIN state is on, which means we want the PIN to be active. And our PIN that we have in this little box right here is actually synchronized with the lock. So I entered 5555, and that's what's here. If I change this PIN up here to something else, let's just make it 4444, and I tab off, you'll notice a few things. It changes to connecting here. The desired PIN state is on, but the PIN is not synchronized with the lock. So we're going to wait for that for a second. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds, and now you can see that the PIN is synchronized with the lock, and you can see now that the lock code has been changed. Same thing occurs with the other slots. This is test pin 2, and the pin currently is, I don't know what it's set to, 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. It's enabled, and the reason it's not currently available or on that lock is because the desired pin state is off. The pin is synchronized with the lock, it just isn't turned on. And you can see that where it says available rather than enabled in Z-Wave.js. So the reason why is in this advanced options section, I actually set this pin to only be available on Wednesdays from 8 o'clock a.m. to 4:36 because I was testing. Now, if I set this to something like the 00s, like 24 hours a whole day, then it would become available. Or if I turn this and set the time range, it's available Wednesday but all day, then it should come back into desired pin state is on, and then the pin is going to synchronize with the lock. Now it has to send the pin over to the lock, so you can see where it says connecting. Now it says connected. The desired pin state is on, the pin is synchronized with the lock. And so if we look in our control panel, we see enabled here, and we say see user code 1234 is the code for that particular slot. Now, as I talked about before, you can reset the code slot. You can enforce this pin limit. Enforcing the pin limit means that if you set this to something greater than 0 and you turn that on, that means in this code slot, this pin can be entered into the lock 4 times. When this reaches 0, it will no longer allow that lock to use this pin slot or this pin code until you either turn this off or you set this above 0 again. So you can set it to only do it a few times. You can use a date range. And so for example, let's say I do this for a week. So this pin code is only going to be available for a week. And you need to turn all this stuff off as well. But this will be available for a week. Let's say you're going to go on vacation. You want someone to watch the animals or whatever, check on the house. You could set this for a week, and then it would automatically disable that code after a week. So whoever was coming over couldn't get into the house anymore. So that's an option. And of course, you can set specific days of the week that the pin code is active, and you can set specific times on each day of the week. So let's say I have a cleaning person coming on Tuesday. They're going to come between the hours of 8 and 1 o'clock, sometime in there. So this code then on Tuesday, and now you need to turn, I mean, this is for Tuesday. So I only want this code available on Tuesday, for example. I can turn all these others off. And this pin code is now only going to be available between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Tuesday. And you'll see now that the desired pin state is off. The pin is synchronized, but it's off because, and again here, available with no slot, no code in the slot, because we're outside that Tuesday window. As of the recording, this is Wednesday. So that's what we were showing here. You can do this with all the codes that you want to do. Now let's talk about notifications. If we come back over here to notification section of the wiki page, here's an example script. Now I'm using pushover, and I already have that installed. I'm not going to go through how to install pushover in this video, but if you're using pushover, I'll give you an example how this works. So I'm going to just copy this full bit here. I'm going to go into file editor, and this is going to go into my scripts file. So I'm going to go find my scripts YAML file, because this is a script. There it is. And I'm going to go down to the bottom of the file, and I'm going to paste this in. And I will make a change to the file. Instead of saying, I'll have to replace door name is what I'm going to change here. So door name would become front door. I will name this front door _manual _notify. Make that bigger for you, I think. There we go. Mode is parallel. Sequence is service notify, and I'll change this from notify phone to notify pushover, because that's the name of the notification service I have. And then the title and the message are dynamically created. And those will come to your pushover whenever the door lock is unlocked. It's going to tell you the code. So let me save this first. All right, so once you're finished in file editor, you need to go back over to your configuration, to server controls, and make sure that everything looks good for your configuration. And then down here, you can reload the scripts by clicking on the scripts button right there. Now, once you save the configuration and reload it, the scripts file, you should be able to unlock the door and you'll get a notification. And you can see here that we have a lot of notification that says keypad unlocked operation family. And of course, family is this right here. So that's the name of the code slot that was used to unlock the door. All right, so you can also do automations against these, and that's for another video. So stay tuned and subscribe if you want to see those. I'll make a video on that next. But I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, make sure you put those down in the comments below. If you liked the video, give that a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, do me a huge favor and just hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps the channel here. And also you can hit me on Discord if you have any other questions, and we'll see you on the next one.